Now, first things first, my hands are currently disabled. As you can see, the color of them is a little bit dim and dull.
Within the confines of the ever-abandoned space station I call home, many horrors reside. But I stand unbothered, as claws and teeth lurking in the shadows are but the most natural, mechanical and simple kind of terror. What strikes a cold spike of fear in my heart is far less direct, far more destructive and indefensible. It is the spiral of madness that consumes white men when talking about RPGs. But what kind of man lives his life in shadow of what he fears, never challenging himself and seeing eye to eye with his own terrors? Not this one. I'm not going into this fight with bare fists. I'm carrying the most effective of weapons ever conceived: ignorance. I'm not an RPG guy. Not that I dislike this genre, I just did not grow up with it nor into it. Many titles I see thrown left and right as the next concurrent comings of our Lord and Savior I find far more interesting in theory than in practice. Now that I think of it, I played maybe 10 RPGs to completion, and only one of those I'd call objectively brilliant. So excuse and expect my lack of familiarity of some genre staples and my poor dictionary, or treat it as a fresh set of eyes, looking at a game that kinda happens to be engineered for those kind of light receptors. If you don't have however long this video is going to be to find out how, here's the TLDR. Mass Effect is two things: a good game, and on a scale from Contra to Europa Universalis, I would place it more or less here, as a missing link between action games and action RPGs. Let's do this. Usually I like to nag about the frame rate and little glitches around here in the script, and worry not, it's still ahead of us, but let's have some fun with it. I am fully aware that Mass Effect is far from the only game in the series. I'm also aware that 360 release of the game is not the only one, and I have not played any of those games, but I might. And for that occasion I would like to compile two lists. Wishlists. One for the sequel, with all the things that rubbed me the wrong way, and one for the remaster, with all the little quality of life annoyances that bothered me through my time with Mass Effect, just like grains of sand from a found hot dog that ruin my enamel each time I found and devour one, and well, the phenomenon of mysterious almost fresh hot dogs appearing around an abandoned space station is fascinating. I prefer not to think too much of it and just let myself drift away in the stream of taste and pleasure, which is the exact way I feel about Mass Effect. So let's start with complaining. Choosing the shotgun class would be a good idea if my platform of choice could run the close quarters fights in more than 5 FPS or without input lag. And so, my little mischievous plan for a smart structure device in my Rambly video falls apart, because it is hard to be immersed in a cinematic experience about a world-ending cosmic conflict when the game can't render more than 4 enemies without combusting, so lack of checkpoints before bigger fights really messes with my habits and screw me up a couple times. Mass Effect does the not telling you how to do stuff the worst way possible, by putting you in linear segments and expecting to do shit but not telling you which buttons to use. I had to look into the manual, a physical one, to figure out how to change weapons and space magic powers. All that would be a non-issue if there was a couple of prompts on the screen here and there, so... But then again, I might just be an idiot. Just like everyone in this game, enemies have a curious habit of running towards you in open spaces straight on, and your buddies are not much better, blocking your view at the crosshair and whatever you happen to be aiming at with effort worth a better cause. I'm not a developer, but I think that overhaul of AI system in a 2007 game might be a tall order, so I'll leave this one for the sequel. I really hated how you can't see map and quests at the same time, causing you to jump back and forth, so fixing that would be nice. Using space magic takes Shepard more than a nanosecond. After all, you have to watch that amazing animation each time, and that delay can fuck off, but that's talking about the combat system, and it's way too early for that. Let's put those away for a moment. They will be back, hopefully, Not sure really. As I'm writing the script, it is not yet written. I don't want to get hung up on the presentation for too long. There are much more pressing matters to attend here, and the script is quickly growing to a size which I will deeply regret sometime in the future. So firstly, the music. Those delicate synths fit the theme exceptionally well, are brilliantly composed, and if the start screen in its entirety was a living creature of any kind, I would take it on a fancy date and fuck it raw after. Excellent. Chef's kiss. Mwah. Secondly, the vibe. Overall impression Mass Effect left me with is one of like a Netflix miniseries. Designs are thought through, story has its twists, turns and tribulations. Writing has a nice pace, missions are even sectioned into little open worlds on different planets with side quests fully contained, dividing the entire game into almost literal episodes. I might not be an enthusiast of a genre, but I played a couple of Far Crys, so I consider myself an authority on a topic. So, I will employ an RPG theory that I have seen somewhere on the internet ages ago. RPGs rest on 3 pillars, and I hope that looking at Mass Effect through that prism will display kind of what it was going for. The first one is character roleplay. It's your investment in and identification with the character you have created. It's the choices you make and where do they lead you to. Mass Effect has decisions that influence the story in some ways, as it should, but the big star, the show feature, is the morality system. Each time you make a decision, you get either good boy points or bad boy points, and those affect the game in a couple of ways. Firstly, you get various perks the more of a boy you become, and secondly, each time you are faced with a choice, you can easily tell which option is going to get you which way. Well, most of the time. Point is that writing quests around this system leads to very binary choices. Not that I consider it a flaw. Remember, I'm not an RPG guy, and when I happen to play one, I take great pleasure in being as much of an asshole as possible, and having not only a clear choice in each dialogue that will get me where I want to go, but also a stat that quantifies my asshole level. It's really nice. The dialogue system is a really interesting compromise. Dialogue in traditional CRPGs often boils down to reading walls of text, both of NPCs and yours, which is more than fine and allows you to read your lines in your own head, with your own voice and your own tone. This blurs the line between your character and yourself. Shepard is not the player, however. Unlike protagonists in most RPGs I have played, Shepard is not amnesiac or new to the world. He already knows his stuff and has been a character long before you started the game. Because of that, and because it helps a lot in selling the cinematic presentation and controlling the game with controller, the circular dialogue menu with paraphrases of what Shepard is about to say works. Kind of. It works unless paraphrases have little to do with actual phrase, which happens. Mass Effect does not offer the level of emergence and personalization of experience as many of the more traditional RPGs do, but I'd argue that this sacrifice was made for the benefit of game's pace and style of presentation. In the context of our current pillar, it means that the world is not as open as one would expect, story is much more linear than many may want, and choices have maybe not enough consequences, but what you get in return is the previously mentioned presentation of a really high-budget TV series. Without all those concessions, the main story could not have been as tightly paced, would lack the sense of urgency and the appeal to uncultured mouth breathers, such as yours truly.
The second pillar, exploration.
Mass Effect lacks the open world in the gigantic flat plane sense. Instead, there are around 40 bumpy little ones. I don't know for sure the square mileage of all the locales combined, but I think I'm safe to say it would add up to one quite big one. Not that there would be much to see, as they are quite empty and meant to be driven around in a forever great Suzuki Samurai. No alien forests or dense cities outside of the main quest, so put out to the list. And by the way, Mako is not that bad to control. I mean, it's not great by any measure, but cut those guys some slack. They made a cinematic feast, an RPG and a shooter all in one go, so don't expect Forza. Mass Effect creates the illusion of space exploration by the flavor text, and it really does it quite great, believe it or not. While you look at the space map on your ship, you get to read through some of it while enjoying the spectacular music and overall vibe. Not that you would get anything out of my footage as it's in Polish. The last, and arguably most crucial pillar to examine is the mechanics. is the way BioWare converted the D&D dice rolls into the framework of a third-person shooter. A word of caution and point of annoyance through my entire time with Mass Effect was the fact that your character class limits your weapon class selection. I mean, you can use them, but they end up being about as effective as harsh language. Being unable to adapt Shepard's gear depending on the situation would be nice, but then again, you are at all times accompanied by two friendly NPCs whose class and gear you have control over, emphasizing your reliance on them and careful team making. You might be horrified in an idea of counting on 2007 NPC AI, but it ends up working quite well since you have total control over their space magic usage and gun selection. Mass Effect has shooting. A ton of it, in fact, but BioWare understandably had little expertise in this space, so obviously it's jank. At the delicate balance of having it working on a 360 and keeping it fun no matter your class, squad or skill levels, especially in the side quests, it's no wonder why it kinda sucks. It's hard to describe exactly the feel of jank, but the movement, cover system, aim acceleration and feedback are all under whack. I'd expect the remaster to fiddle with some sliders in the engine, but really, is the job for the sequel. You eventually learn to adapt to it, and as you get better guns, attachments, armor upgrades, and more importantly, space magic, it really does come together. Mass Effect is also full of little conveniences that streamline the, things that people not into RPGs find fucking boring. Bodies get looted automatically. Instead of skill trees, you get skill stripes, which are going to be full by the end of the game anyways. You can have game assign skill points of NPCs on its own. NPCs level up with Shepard, even if you leave them on the ship. If you don't want to bother with going to a merchant to convert your ballast into some cash, you can transform it into Omnigel on the spot. And it's still useful. Healing items, heal the entire squad, and there is more. Point is, item management, squad management, skills, leveling up, all that is made simple and hassle-free. Mass Effect is also really quite short for an RPG. Running through the main quest could be easily done within a couple of game sessions, and even if you are dead on doing all the quests and visiting every single planet, it's less than half of what you might expect. But here's the thing, it's fine. It's fine not only because Mass Effect understands its limitations and knows that there is only so much to do within its combat sandbox, quest variety and build variety and plasticity, that 40 hours is as much as those systems can be realistically spread to, but also because of the customer. How many times have you decided not to touch a game because playing it would take 60, 80, 150 hours? Or how many games have you left hanging with years old save files and stories never to be told? Mass Effect knows what it wants to be. A gateway drug into role-playing games, and it does stumble. It makes difficult compromises, but also it does hit the spot where it matters. Because above all, Mass Effect is a good game. It is my personal opinion that no matter if you are someone that spends his time in Kenshi, Halo, Wii Sports, or that really good Avatar game that just came out, if you keep your head open enough to allow Mass Effect to show its best side, you will find something to appreciate in it. And as for me, those lists are not for nothing. I will be back on the deck of Normandy very soon. Take care.